Sometimes taking the time to prepare for interviews, you often forget about the basic things that may be asked at the beginning of the interview. Let's quickly go over the basic Linux commands. This information will be useful for all areas of IT positions for vacancies. You do not need to spend a lot of time on it, that's why I tried to make this video in a quick format, just to brush up on general basic knowledge of Linux. Linus Torvalds' contributions to the world of technology go beyond Linux. He also created Git, a distributed version control system widely used by developers worldwide. His dedication to open source principles and his leadership in the Linux kernel development have made him an influential figure in the software community. Linux is an open source operating system that was initially developed by Linus Torvalds as a hobby in 1991. It has since grown into a powerful and versatile operating system used worldwide. The Linux kernel acts as an interface between the hardware and the software running on the system. One of the key features of Linux is its distribution model. Different organizations and communities create their own versions of Linux called distributions or distros. These distributions build on top of the Linux kernel and provide complete operating system with additional software, tools, and a user interface. Some popular Linux distributions include Ubuntu, Fedora, Debian, and CentOS.
How to check Linux distribution and version? To check Linux distribution and version, you can use one of the following commands. lsb release-a. This command displays lsb Linux standard base information about the Linux distribution, including its name and version. cat etcos release. This command displays information about the Linux distribution from the etcos release file. uname-a. This command displays various system information, including the kernel, name, and version. The output of the command lsb release provides information about the Linux distribution you are using. Let's break down what each row means. No lsb modules are available. This message indicates that the Linux standard-based lsb modules are not installed on your system. The LSB provides a standard set of libraries, tools, and specifications to ensure compatibility between different Linux distributions. Distributor ID, Ubuntu. This row specifies the distributor of your Linux distribution, which in this case is Ubuntu. The distributor ID identifies the organization responsible for creating and maintaining the distribution. Description Ubuntu 23.10. This row provides a brief description of your Ubuntu distribution. In this case, it indicates that you are using Ubuntu version 23.10. Release 23.10. This row specifies the release version of your Ubuntu distribution, which is 23.10 in this case. This release version represents a specific iteration or update of the distribution. Codename Mantic. This row indicates the codename associated with release version of your Ubuntu distribution. In this case, the codename is Mantic. Codenames are often used internally to refer to specific release. Let's break down the information provided in the cat etcos release command and understand the meaning of each row. Read name. This row displays a human readable name for your Ubuntu distribution, indicating that it is Ubuntu version 23.10. Name. This row specifies the name of your Linux distribution, which is Ubuntu. Version ID is just the ID of your Ubuntu distribution, which is 23.10. Version 23.10 Mantic Minotaur This row provides additional information about the version of your Ubuntu distribution. It includes both the version 2310 and the codename Mantic Minotaur. Version codename Mantic. This row specifies the codename associated with the release version of your Ubuntu distribution. In this case, the codename is Mantic. ID is the row indicates the ID of your Ubuntu distribution, often used to identify the specific distribution. ID, like this row, specifies that Ubuntu is based on Debian, another popular Linux distribution. The ID-like field indicates the relationship between different distributions. Home URL. This row provides URL for the official Ubuntu website, where you can find more information about the distribution. Support URL. This row specifies the URL for the Ubuntu support website, where you can find resources and assistance for using Ubuntu. Bug report URL. This row provides the URL of reporting bugs related to Ubuntu. If you encounter any issues, you can use this link to report them. Privacy policy URL. This row specifies the URL of the privacy policy of Ubuntu. It provides information about how Ubuntu handles user privacy. Ubuntu codename, again, Mantic reiterates the codename associated with the release version of Ubuntu distribution, which is Mantic. And logo, Ubuntu logo. This row indicates the logo associated with Ubuntu. The output of the uname command provides information about the system's kernel and hardware. Let's break down what each part of the data means. Linux RPI, indicates that the operating system is Linux, and RPI refers to the host name of the system. Further, the kernel version, in this case, it is version 6.5.0, and next provides additional information about the kernel, including the build number, date, and time of compilation. ARC64 indicates the architecture of the system, which is ARC64. This architecture is commonly used for 64-bit ARM processors. GNU Linux specifies that the system is running the GNU operating system in conjunction with the Linux kernel. The GNU operating system is a Unix-like operating system.
How to check the disk space usage in Linux? To check the disk space usage in Linux, you can use the df and du commands. The df command stands for disk free and provides information about the disk space usage on your system. It displays the amount of space taken up by different drives, but by default, df displays values in 1 kilobyte blocks. If you want to display the disk usage in megabytes or gigabytes, you can use the -h option. The du command is used to display file system disk space usage. It focuses on the directories that consume space on your system. You can use it to get a more detailed breakdown of disk usage by specific directories. The command du have some options like -sh and the path varlock asterisk is used to check as the disk space usage of the files and directories within the varlock directory in Linux. The du command stands for disk usage and is used to estimate file and directory space usage on Linux system. -s option is used to summarize the disk usage of each specified file or directory rather than displaying the usage of individual files within directories. -H option stands for human readable format and is used to display the disk usage in a more readable format using units like megabytes or gigabytes. The path varlog has the path to the varlog directory, followed by which is wildcard character that matches all files and directories within the varlog directory. What's the difference between root user and sudo command? So sudo command, the sudo command allows authorized users to execute commands with the privileges of the root user without actually logging in as the root user. It provides a way to delegate administrative tasks to regular users while maintaining security and accountability. With sudo, users can perform specific administrative tasks by providing their own password rather than the root password. The sudo command is configured through the sudoers file, which determines who can use sudo and what they can do with it. Compare with root user. The root user, also known as the superuser, is a special user account with the complete control of the system. The root user has the highest level of administrative privileges and can perform any task allowed by the operating system. Root privileges include the ability to read, write, and execute any file or command on the system. The root user is typically used for system administration tasks that require unrestricted access to the system. How to add a user in Linux? Note, only root may add a user or group to the system. After entering this command, you will be prompted to set a password for the new user, enter a strong password and confirm it. Also, you will then be asked to provide some additional information about the user, such as their full name, phone number, etc. You can either enter the information or leave it blank by pressing Enter. How to give sudo privileges to a user in Linux. Note, login as a user with full sudo privileges. To give sudo privileges to a user in Linux, you have a couple of options. Method 1, by editing the sudoers file, run the command sudo by sudo, scroll down to the section that starts with %sudo or %admin, add the user and privileges line below the section, replacing user with the actual user name. Method 2, adding the user to the sudo group. Run the command sudo usermod and replacing user with the actual username. This command adds the user to the sudo group which grants sudo privileges. After following either of these methods, the user will have sudo privileges and will be able to run commands with administrative permissions. Verify that the user has been added to the sudo group by running the command groups and the name of the user. How to delete a Linux user. Note: only root user may add a user or group to the system. After entering these commands, you will be prompted to set a password for the new user, enter a strong password and confirm it. To delete the user's home directory and mails pool, you can add the --remove home option to the command. How to lock or unlock a Linux user. To lock or unlock a Linux user account, you have several methods available. Here are a few commonly used approaches. The passwd command can be used to lock or unlock a user account. This method modifies the password field in the etc shadow file to lock or unlock the account. The usermod command is another way to lock or unlock a user account. This method adds or removes an exclamation mark in the second field of the etc passwd file to lock or unlock the account. What is init in Linux? In Linux, the init process is the first process that is started by the kernel during the system boot process. It has a process ID of 1 and serves as the parent or grandparent of all other processes on the system. The init process initializes the system, reads the etc init tab file, determines the run level, and launches scripts and processes accordingly. In Ubuntu and many other Linux distributions, the etc init tab file is no longer used. The traditional systemd init system, which relied on the etc init tab file, has been replaced by newer init systems like Upstart or systemd. What is systemd units? Systemd units are the individual components or configurations used by systemd init system in Linux to manage system processes and services. Each unit represents a specific task or action that systemd can perform or control. Units are organized into different types based on the type of resource they describe, such as services, targets, timers, sockets, and more. A systemd unit consists of a name, type, and configuration file. The name provides a unique identity to the unit, while the configuration file defines the responsibility or task of the unit. The type helps group similar units together. What is systemd? Systemd is a suite of basic building blocks for a Linux system. It serves as a system and services manager that runs as process ID 1 and starts the rest of the system. Systemd provides several key features and functionalities that enhance the management and control of a Linux system. Systemd has become the default initialization system on many popular Linux distributions due to its efficient parallelization, dependency management, and overall improvement in system control. It offers a comprehensive set of tools and features for managing and controlling processes, services, and system resources. What is targets? In Linux, targets refer to a concept introduced by systemd init system as a replacement for run levels. A target represents a specific system state or run level that defines the services and processes running in the state. By using targets, systemd provides a flexible and efficient way to manage system states and control services and processes running in those states. System administrators can manage targets using systemd commands, such as systemctl. Commands like systemctl set default allow changing the default target, while systemctl isolate allows switching to a specific target during runtime. What is dpkg? dpkg is a command-line package management tool used in Debian-based Linux distributions, including Ubuntu. It is short for Debian Package Manager. The primary purpose of dpkg is to install, build, remove, and manage software packages on the system. What is timers in Linux? Timers in Linux are mechanisms used for managing time-related events and tasks within the Linux kernel. They provided a way to schedule the execution of functions at specific intervals or at particular time in the future. How would you check the open ports in Linux? Sudo elseof. This will display the process and the associated open ports that are in the listen state. Netstat command is another option to display a list of all ports on Linux. Netstat with option tune will show the TCP and UDP ports that are currently open and listening, similar to ss command. SS command is used to display open TCP and UDP ports. You can run the following commands to see a list of open ports. How would you check the open ports on Linux? Sudo elseof with options. This will display the processes and their associated ports, open ports, that are in the listen state. Netstat command is another option to display a list of all ports on Linux. Netstat with option tune will show the TCP and UDP ports that are currently open and listening, similar to the ss command. ss command is used to display open TCP and UDP ports. You can run the following command to see a list of open ports. ss with option tune will show the TCP and UDP ports that are currently open and listening. How would you capture network traffic on a Linux system? TCP dump is a powerful command line packet sniffer that allows you to capture and analyze network traffic. Sudo TCP dump with option of the name of interface. Replace interface with the name of the network interface you want to capture traffic from, such as S0 or WLAN 0. By default, TCP dump will display detailed information about each captured packet. What is hypervisor in Linux? A hypervisor, also known as a virtual machine monitor, VMM, is software or firmware that enables the creation and management of virtual machines. It allows multiple operating systems to run concurrently on the same hardware, each in its isolated virtual environment. To check if hypervisor is enabled on a Linux system, you can use the following methods. What is GRUB in Linux? GRUB, short for GNU GRUB, Grand Unified Bootloader, is a bootloader and boot manager used in Linux and other Unix-based operating systems. It is responsible for loading the operating system kernel into memory and transferring control to it during the boot process. What are zombie processes and how detect them? Zombie processes, also known as defunct processes, are a type of process that has completed its execution but still has an entry in the process table. When a child process finishes its execution, it becomes a zombie process if the parent process has not yet collected its exit status. The zombie process remains in the system until the parent process acknowledges its termination and retrieves the exit status. Zombie processes are automatically ripped by the system when their parent process terminates. However, if you want to manually remove zombie processes, you can kill their parent process using the kill command with the appropriate signal. What are hard and soft links? Hard links directly reference the physical file and share the same inode. They are restricted to the same file system. Soft links are symbolic references to the target file or directory and have their own inode. They can span across different file systems. To detect hard links and soft links in your system, you can use ls command with the I option to display the inode numbers of files. Hard links will have the same inode number as the original file, while soft links will have a different inode number. What is inode? In Linux, an inode index node is a data structure used by the file system to describe a file or directory. It contains metadata about the file, such as its type, permissions, owner ID, group ID, size, timestamps, last accessed, last modified, and last changed. The number of hard links associated with the file. To check inode in your system, the command df with option I gives the details of the file system, and ls with options I will provide the inodes for file or directory. What is superblock? The superblock is a critical data structure within a file system that contains metadata about the file system itself. It provides essential information such as the file system type, size, status, and details about other metadata structures. It's important to know that the specific structure and location of the superblock can vary depending on the file system type. Different file systems, such as x2, x3, x4, and others, have their own implementations of the superblock. Overall, the superblock is a critical component of a file system, providing essential information for the proper functioning and management of the file system. What is the usage of modeprobe.conf file? The modeprobe.conf file is a configuration file used by the modeprobe command in Linux. It provides a way to specific module-related options and settings for the kernel modules. It's important to know that the specific usage and syntax of modeprobe.conf may vary depending on the Linux distribution and version you are using. It is recommended to consult the documentation or manual pages, man modeprobe.conf or man modeprobe.d, specific to your distribution for detailed information on configuring modeprobe and its associated files. What is Heartbeat? In Linux, Heartbeat is a software package that facilitates high availability HA clustering. It establishes communication and coordination between nodes in a cluster to monitor the state of each node and ensure the availability of services. Heartbeat is used in any Linux cluster to internode state. It's important to know the specific configuration and usage of Heartbeat may vary depending on the Linux distribution and version you are using. Difference between a process and thread. A process is an instance of a program in execution. It is an independent entity with its own memory space, file descriptors, and system resources. Each process has its own address space and runs in isolation from other processes. Processes are heavyweight and require more system resources. A thread is a lightweight unit of execution within a process. Multiple threads can exist within a single process and share the same memory space. Threads within a process can communicate with each other more easily than processes. Threads are more efficient in terms of resource usage compared to processes. What is a shell in Linux? A shell in Linux is a program that serves as an interface between the user and the operating system. It takes commands from the user, interprets them, and executes them by interacting with the kernel. The shell provides a command line interface, CLI, where users can enter commands to perform various tasks. In Linux, a shell is a command line interpreter that provides an interface between the user and the operating system. It allows users to interact with the system by executing commands and scripts. The shell interprets the commands entered by the user and communicates with the kernel to perform the requested operations. The default shell in most Linux distributions is the bash shell, burn again shell. How to find the IP address of a Linux system. To find the IP address of a Linux system, you can use the ifconfig and hostname with option I command or the IP command. Ifconfig, look for the network interface you are interested in, e.g. S0, WLAN0, and find the inet field, which displays the IP address assigned to that interface. IP, look for the network interface you are interested in and find the inet field, which displays the IP address assigned to that interface. The hostname with option I command is used to retrieve the IP addresses assigned to the network interface of a device. The option I is used to specifically retrieve the IP addresses assigned to the network interface. Difference between grep and set commands. Grep is primarily used for searching and filtering text based on patterns, while set is more focused on performing text transformations and editing. Grep is useful for quickly finding specific information, while set is handy for more complex text manipulation tasks. How to change file permissions in Linux? To change file permissions in Linux, you can use the chmod command. The chmod command allows you to modify and read, write, and execute permissions for a file. Grant read and write permissions to the user, and read-only permissions to the group and others. Grant execute permissions to all users. Revoke write permission from the group and others. What is the purpose of cron daemon in Linux? The purpose of cron daemon in Linux is to schedule and execute recurring tasks or commands at specific intervals. The cron daemon, also known as cron-d, runs in the background and periodically checks predefined directories for cron job files. These cron job files, known as cron tabs, contain instructions for the cron daemon on when and how to execute specific commands. Scheduling. Cron jobs can be scheduled to run at specific times, on specific days of the week, or at regular intervals. The cron syntax allows for flexible scheduling using minute, hour, day of the month, and day of the week fields. Difference between V and Vim editors. The V and Vim editors are both widely used text editors in Linux, with Vim being an enhanced version of V. What is the purpose of the chroot command in Linux? The chroot command in Linux is used to change the root directory for a process and its child processes. It creates a modified environment known as chroot jail, where the process is confined and can only access files and commands within the environment. The purpose of using chroot can vary, and here are a few common use cases. Security and isolation, testing and debugging, system recovery. How do you check the network connectivity in Linux? To check network connectivity in Linux, you can use various commands and utilities. Here are some commonly used methods. The ping command is a basic tool for checking network connectivity. It sends ICMP echo request to a specified IP address or hostname and waits for a response. If you receive a response, it indicates that there is network connectivity between your system and target. Difference between a local variable and environment variable. Local variables are specific to a particular scope and are used for temporary storage within the scope, while environment variables are global and accessible by all processes running on the system, providing configuration settings and system-wide information. To check local variables in Linux, you can use the set command. It displays all variables, including local variables, environment variables, and shell variables that are currently defined in your shell session. To check environment variable specifically, you can use the env command. It displays the environment variables that are set in your current shell session. How do you check the system load average in Linux? To check the system load average in Linux, you can use various commands. The uptime command provides information about the system's current uptime as well as load average of the last 1, 5, and 15 minutes, it gives you a quick overview of the system's load. The top command displays real-time information about system processes, including the load average. When you run the top command, you'll see the load average displayed at the top of the output. The proc load avg file contains the current system load average. You can use the cat command to display the contents of the file. How do you check the memory usage in Linux? To check memory usage in Linux, you can use several commands. The free command provides information about total used and free memory, both physical RAM and swap space. It displays the values in kilobytes by default, but you can use the M option to display them in megabytes for easier reading. The htop command is an interactive process viewer that provides a more user-friendly and feature-rich alternative to the top command. It displays memory usage in a color-coded and easy-to-read format. The ps command can be used to check memory usage of individual processes. By combining ps with other commands like grep and sort, you can filter and sort the processes based on memory usage. How do you search for a file in Linux? To search for a file in Linux, you can use the find command. The find command allows you to search for files and directories based on various criteria such as name, type, size, and more. Search by a type. You can search for files based on their type using the type option. For example, to find all directories in home directory. Search by size. To search for files based on their size, you can use the size option. For example, to find all files larger than 1 megabyte in the current directory. Search by modified time. You can search for files based on their modification time using the mtime option. How do you check the system boot messages in Linux? To check the system boot messages in Linux, there are few methods you can use. dmessage command displays the kernel ring buffer, which contains the boot messages and other kernel-related information. journalctl, if your Linux distribution uses systemd, you can use the journalctl command to view the system log, including boot messages. What is password file? The password file is a text-based database file in Linux that contains information about user accounts on the system. It is one of the essential files for user management. User account information. Each line in the password file represents a user account and contains several fields separated by colons. These fields typically include the username, user ID, group ID, user's home directory, default shell, and other account-related information. Authentication. In the past, the password file used to store hashed passwords for user accounts. However, for security reasons, modern Linux systems store password information in a separate file called shadow or use other database implementations. The password field in the password file now typically contains an X character, indicating that the password is stored elsewhere. Readability and permissions. By default, the password file has permissions that allow it to be readable by all users on the system. However, only the superuser, root, or privileged commands can modify the file. How do you find and kill a process in Linux? Finding the process. Before killing a process, you need to identify its process ID. There are several commands you can use to find the process ID of a process. PS. The PS command displays information about active processes. You can use options like aux or ef to get a detailed list of processes and their process IDs. pgrep command allows you to search for processes by name and retrieve their process IDs. Killing the process. Once you have the process ID of the process you want to terminate, you can use the kill command followed by the process ID. The kill command sends a signal to the process requesting it to terminate gracefully. The most commonly used signals are sigterm 15. This is the default signal sent by kill and it requests that processes to terminate. sigkill 9. The signal forcefully terminates the process without giving it a chance to clean up. Difference between absolute path and relative path. The main difference between absolute and relative paths is the absolute path provides the full path from the root directory, while relative paths provide a path relative to the current working directory. It's important to know that the interpretation of relative paths depends on the current working directory, while absolute paths are independent of the current working directory. Thank you for watching. I hope this information was useful.